calling this meeting to order, and we have our flag salute. So, attention, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everybody. Item number 3, consideration of possible action on approving agreement with Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management for the sub-grant of the Emergency Management Performance Grant Program funds. David?
I know this was tabled. This is my SLA grant. This will be my 4th or 5th year to do this, if I'm not mistaken. I have Tracy Bender here from OEM today. If you guys have any questions about the grant or emergency management or anything along those lines. One of the cool things this year, the state has updated. It has been 10,000 in the past, and this year, if you guys approve it and we meet the requirements, it'll be 20.
Whoa.
So I think that's a good thing. I would like to ask if it
We can cut your pay.
well,
No.
it's.
No, I'm kidding.
Hopefully we could use the extra money. One of the deals that I've been trying to do the last couple of years, and it just hasn't worked out on a special project, we don't have a light tower like you can pull behind your truck
Oh,
and raise up anywhere in the county that the city or the county owns. And I think it would be an awesome project if we could, that extra money, purchase a light tower. So if you guys are working on a road project and you go past night, if you needed it, it would be here. If the city of Guthrie's working on, has a water line that breaks 2 o'clock in the morning, would have access to it. You know, if we had a storm, tornado, fire, when we had our big fires in May, we were very grateful. Terry Bobo has a couple of light towers that he had close that he brought out and used. And then there was a couple of guys from the Crescent Fire Department they're a full-time job, they work for an oil company, and they were able to get some light towers brought in for us during the fires. But it's just something that we don't have in the county is a light tower that you pull behind. So that's what I would like to be able to do with the extra grant, if you guys so approve the grant.
Discussion?
I think I'm the one that asked for it to be delayed. You know, I just wanted to look over the grant wording. And let me, if I may, I asked the sheriff to look over, or have someone, since we're going to have a meeting of all the officers here, right? The sheriff to look over this Article 9, the Sub-Grant Administration, Item B, other duties as assigned, right? In my experience in the military, that basically means other duties as assigned is you do everything I tell you to do when I tell you to do it. So it kind of raised a concern with me that I wanted to bounce off of the senior law enforcement officer of the county, right? Because when, as I outlined here as a military person, you know, is there any tasking that would concern this? Is there any tasking that could come from the Federal Emergency Management Office, FEMA, or anybody else that would concern the sheriff's office? I think with the, in light of some of the things that have happened in Louisiana and Katrina and things like that, where FEMA and some of the federal folks have come in and kind of taken over an area, that concerns me a little bit. That's why I wanted the sheriff's views on that before we signed it. And maybe we could just add a term based on the sheriff's input on, or add some language that Item B is agreed to with the following exceptions, except, you know, whatever the sheriff decides for working, if we need to do that. But that's just my view.
Grant application?
That's grant requirements. It's not a, you can't change the verbiage in it. But we would never mandate, or in the FEMA, you know, would never mandate, like for instance, with our emergency managers, I mean, we would just never say, we have a disaster, you know, such as Sandy or Katrina or anything, you know, we would never come in and mandate, you've got to come and bring all your stuff. You know, we just, that's not something that we would do.
So that's from the state side, right?
Well,
you represent the state?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it's the federal people I'm most concerned
well,
with.
And all that means is if there was any other guidance that we had to do as far as if he had to, you know, do an extra exercise or an extra, I mean, nothing would mandate him away from his jurisdiction, if that's what you're.
No, I think what I'm reading there is that it's similar to the old adage, if you take the king's shilling, you do the king's bidding. So if we take federal money, if we take a federal grant, then what we're doing is saying we will abide by anything the federal government says that relates to emergency management in our county, that they tell us to do. That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, now you're gonna keep in mind, the grant requirements have already been set. However, we don't come in, I mean, there is no way, even the federal government will not come in and say you have to do this unless it goes through a process of the state and everybody, the whole group of us getting together.
Yes,
There is nothing that's gonna say, you know, you've gotta, I don't know what a good example would be, to be honest with you, because we've never had such a thing come about.
Let me give you an example then. National Guard troops in Louisiana going house to house disarming citizens and rounding them up.
That's a totally different entity. National Guard is not something, I mean,
That's-
we work
that's
with
the-
them, but
that's-
they are actually federal assets.
Yes, ma'am, that was a FEMA directed action in Louisiana.
But they're a FEMA asset. They actually are federal government,
I understand.
but they can't, I'm sorry.
Our state Department of Emergency Management has, they have no jurisdiction.
Right, you guys are your own jurisdiction. The only thing that the grant does is you just have to, he has to meet the grant requirements as exercises, training, and things to produce, you know, citizens preparedness.
So when it comes to the backside here, political subdivision shall also be considered as part of the required tasking elements.
That bothered me too, Mike.
Say, and it does say shall
Shall.
also be considered as part of the required tasking elements, but that's just part of that grant. And is that all tasking or only the portions of the grant that
Well,
you're getting, or?
considering that he is your employee, if something happens and he's unable to fulfill that grant because of illness or whatever, I mean, you're signing off on the grant saying that that's gonna be fulfilled regardless if he's, you know, something happens. You would then become
To the best
responsible.
of his ability.
Right, just the same as it would be if there was a disaster here and he was out of state or out of country, it would be your, you know, your position to, you know, run that
But this is
position.
disaster related, this is not law enforcement.
No, it has nothing to do with, I was curious when he said something about the sheriff and law enforcement, it has nothing to do with that particular entity whatsoever.
Jim ever reply back to you?
I respectfully disagree with you. I think disasters often involve law enforcement.
No. They do, but we work with those agencies. They don't dictate or anything like that, and we don't dictate to them.
My concern is the wording of this other duties, where it starts off, any task in which Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management receives from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, et cetera, et cetera. So when it says any tasking received from the federal by the state, basically it says anything they say, you guys gotta do, is the way I read this.
Okay, well, but the guidelines have already been set, and they're all in there, and there's nothing's gonna change. I mean, we have not ever had anything change in midstream, ever. I mean, I cannot imagine them coming to us and saying, okay, now we're gonna go in and I mean, like I said, it wouldn't have anything to do with us anyway as far as disarming people or anything like that. That's strictly a law enforcement thing and has nothing to do with FEMA, for that matter. If they get in touch with the National Guard, that's a whole different entity. That's their federal assets. It's entirely up to you. Like I said, we've been doing this for a lot of years, and the only guidance that we've ever had is the ones that are in here, and it's the only guidelines he has to meet to receive the grant.
And the guidelines are what?
4 tabletop exercises, a full-scale exercise. I have to attend the state conference, have to attend my region
Quarterly meetings.
quarterly meetings, my area workshop, public
Preparedness.
preparedness,
Outreach.
which has been, I've gone to in the past, Lions Club, Kiwanis, we did this fall, a earthquake preparedness at Fogarty School.
Really, nothing has changed at all, except for, I think, during the grant process, they request payment, and that's it. Everything else is the same as it's always been.
So what it sounds like to me is, say for instance, we had a great big riot here in Guthrie, and here comes the National Guard and everybody else down. We would be required to take this sign that you were proposing to have and put it out there to warn people not to come in, is what it kind of sounds like to me. As for you doing something adverse to the citizens, I don't.
Oh, no, we
see
strictly are being
that would
prepared.
ever be an item on this, and so, you know, I mean,
I
the whole-
agree that that's a problematic little portion of it, but I don't see the ramifications going so far as to do anything that might infringe upon the liberties and freedoms of our
Well, matter of fact,
citizens.
the entire purpose of us is life safety and, you know, security of property and things, so it wouldn't,
But
that
that
would
could
never be-
also be turning your guns here
well,
at the
but we
local
wouldn't,
sheriff.
as OEM or
Uh-huh.
emergency management, that would not be an
I
entity we would be
mean, what
involved in.
if Colorado
David, when do you have to have
success
this
for
turned in?
having,
I have to have this back
having
to her by Friday.
Right.
Yes.
commercial sales of guns? I mean, you
Signed and
know.
ready to go, so we can.
No, we don't,
table
that
it,
would
so
be, that would
we only
strictly be a
got a
law
couple-
enforcement
we only got a
issue,
couple
not,
more
not
days to-
anything to do with
it would.
emergency management.
But if law enforcement needs your emergency services.
Well, we're here to support by all means.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if he called me and said, you know, we need the National Guard, you know, come in and keep the peace, then obviously we would request
I
that.
don't have a problem with the tabletop exercises and all the stuff we gotta do to qualify for the grant, that's not, but I would like for.
I'd like to have the sheriff's input.
The sheriff's input on that, see if he thinks.
Well, the grant's due here shortly,
I
right?
have it
I
back
have
to her Friday.
And I have, well, I'm actually supposed to have it back and approved by Friday, so
Yeah,
within the next couple of days.
so,
So last year, it was 15 or
It was-
12
It was
last year?
10.
10 last year.
But we're trying, we're no longer doing extra projects, if you have any idea what that is. And so we've tried to spread out the money so everybody can kind of utilize it to build their program. Because only like 25% of it is allowed to go towards salary, and the rest of it's to go to build the program. And that's what, you know, we're trying to do, so he can actually build, you know, training and exercise and equipment, things like that you need in the county.
You was talking about the light tower. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that, David, but I think the city of Guthrie, I think it's time we sit down and negotiate the contract with them. I think they need to up their fees and.
but that really doesn't have anything to do with this.
Right.
Well, but the money, I mean, the money would be for any citizen's preparedness or project, so.
We do probably need to have a meeting.
We do.
Mhm.
I think it's time to renegotiate that.
Get with Serena and try to put that up. It was like her cut here, you want to try to meet with her? How do you,
Well, for us to go there, it's kind of a,
let's see if we
Problem.
can't get her.
No, we can go.
Yeah, we can-
Generally, they come
We
over
just gotta
here.
take,
They
they gotta
come over
take
here several
the ladies
times.
to record our stuff with us.
okay.
I'll see. if
How-
we can-
Their fiscal year runs opposite of ours, so I'm trying to think.
When is their physical year?
They run October to
They
September.
run off the federal
October.
fiscal year.
So now would be probably the good time for them to get it budgeted for any change.
Mhm. So,
Well, do y'all wanna skip down to the next item and? see
come
if the
back
sheriff
to
shows
this?
up?
Sure.
Or do we?
Sure. I mean, I'd just like to hear, the sheriff's input. I don't have a problem approving it.
We should have the sheriff over here.
I've got a message out, I'm waiting for an answer.
All right.
I'm waiting to see if I hear
Please
from
get over
him.
here.
All
all
right,
right.
jump to item 4.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go down to number 4, which is the discussion with county officers pertaining to the creation of the Logan County Technology and Modernization Committee. It would be chaired by a commissioner and be represented by members of each elected county official, plus the Director of Emergency Management. The purpose of this committee is to advise the Board of County Commissioners with plans and recommendations of where it makes sense to invest, upgrade, or consolidate our county information systems.
Commissioner, I think this is your item
Yeah, it was tabled from.
for the
last
whole
month.
county officers. Yes.
So, yeah, so we wanted to get together and I think it was our treasurer that recommended we have a county officers meeting to discuss this, right? So, as we talked about the last time, I brought this forward because I thought it would be good for all of the county officers to have input, everybody to get together and look at, as technology evolves and moves forward, how we can take advantage of that as a county, as a group, and come together as a group to help save taxpayer funds and provide more visibility into the county's actions and open records. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
If I may, the sheriff says he's in a meeting with the DAs right now. If you can give him a few minutes, that he will be here. I'm just wondering, we're also missing another officer, and that would be Regina. Did you want me to try to, what I'm wondering, if you want to recess till he gets here, or how do you want me to get a hold of Regina?
I think if he's in a meeting that he can come over here in a few minutes, that we ought to go ahead and recess and.
He says that he's still in a meeting with all 4 DAs. I asked if he had a time. He said he'll be here in a few minutes.
Instead of recessing, can we hop down to citizens iron to be heard? I
Oh,
have a
yeah.
question.
Let's do that. Down to number 6, any citizen.
I mean, I got a question for
I'll
her.
try for Regina.
I'd just like to hear your response of what is the role of an emergency management guy?
He is support and resource coordination. I mean, that's a lump sum for you. He should be, anytime there's an incident, I want him in the back pocket of the incident command. That way we know that we can get them any resources that they need. A lot of times, and especially here in Logan County, a few weeks ago, we actually came in and I brought a short team with me. We set up the fire station because there were so many fires going on, and he was able to stay in complete contact with me, and we were able to get the resources quickly and to them directly. We already had forestry staged here, so we were able to get everything on scene very, very quickly that way. But his actual role is support and resource coordination for whatever the incident might be.
No way, form, or fashion would be the incident commander.
Oh, never, 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 never. That would not be his job ever.
I understand. I do.
So he's just a resource guy. then?
Yeah, he does
Resource for-
logistics. He makes sure that you get anything. If you need helos or anything like that, he's my direct contact to make sure that I can get those things to you. And
So if he has to call you and tell you that we need a fire plow to go on a dozer, can you get us one?
a lot of times.
I'd like to have one. Can you get me one?
Well, now, keep in mind, this
Okay,
EMPG money helps with all that. You gotta keep in mind, this EMPG money helps with all that. He can do a lot of things, so. But as far as whenever there's an incident going on, I have a lot of assets that I can get my hands on for you guys. And we do it frequently. I mean,
Well, if we could just get one and station it in Logan County, we could hook on to any one of our dozers,
well, that's something we probably need to write up, and it's a very good possibility. I mean, those things can happen. We do a lot of that.
That really is a legitimate need.
Well, and like I said, we certainly want to fulfill those.
With the brush fires that we have here.
I mean, like I said, we've even been known to buy a, what is that thing called that you put a skid and everything on it? It's one of those Polaris things, yeah. And we've put out a lot of fires and did a lot of back burning even with those, and we bought several different toys like that. And when there's a legitimate need, we make sure that we can try to fulfill that if at all possible.
Yeah, we tried for a REAP grant for one of those, for a wood grants fire department, but it didn't have enough points.
Well, like I said, his EMPG grant money does help with a lot of that. We can,
if you can get a plow, can you get a dozer to go with the plow?
well,
Yeah. Well, you
It might
know,
be a little hard to
it would be best on a dozer to have one that's set up specifically for fire.
Yeah.
I agree. We've actually done some for the front of trucks and things like that, but I don't think that we've ever done with a dozer because that's a lot bigger expense.
Well,
but-
and see, dozers leak hydraulic fuel, et cetera, or hydraulics and sometimes fuel and stuff
Sure.
like that. And really, you need to have one that has been inspected and everything prior to going out to a fire that doesn't have that flammability to it.
Well, the good thing about, like I said, if you're in an incident, that's the fortunate part. And we even did that, I guess, a couple of weeks ago with forestry. I mean, we had dozers and everything on hand to cut bricks. I mean, we had that stuff available and it was here. We already had it staged here, and we were able to get the fires out a lot faster.
You know, I understand that they need to upgrade those because they were all too small, and they're made more for flatland than they are for
And I agree with
forestry.
you, but that's where you're kind of singing to the choir because we have to deal with forestry in that aspect.
Yes.
Because as Oklahoma Emergency Management, our assets go through other agencies. I mean, like I said, whether it's fire, I call forestry. They're the ones with the dozers and they're the ones with the tech
You're
teams.
kind of like the coordinator.
That's what we do, just the same as he does for the
Materials.
county, I do for the state. Actually, I do for the entire Northwest region. So,
Finding resources.
right.
Well, if you're out on a scene and you tell a dozer operator to go through there and cut me a fire block, And who's reliable for that?
Well, the IC is the one who's in, you know, he's actually in command.
Well,
And
let's
he's
say
the
you
one-
go through there and push out someone's pecan trees though, and who's the farmer gonna come back on?
Well, it really depends, because I mean, I've seen some that are actually, control burns that's got out of hand, and it's came back to haunt the actual landowner. As far as a dozer situation for forestry, I don't know how that works, to be honest with you, because I don't know how easy it would be to come back on forestry. Now, if it's a farmer and he's went out there and he's just trying to help you out, I would hope it's not him, but I'm thinking that it's probably a good idea. I mean, it's a good possibility he'd be the one liable.
So.
But I don't wanna say that, you know, I don't
Sheriff
wanna
now.
say that etched in stone, because the truth is in that situation, I'm not real sure how that would fall.
I've always been a little leery about going out there and they say, well, I need a fire block through there. I mean, who's gonna be responsible if the farmer comes back and, well, that was my pride and joy tree that you just shoved there?
Well, it's either that or his house sometimes, and, so it's gonna be,
His house is insured, his tree probably ain't though.
right, that's true, that's true. That's the reason that's like people who spray and stuff, it always makes me nervous whenever I think about, the wind itself could take that, and you're liable for their prized rose bush or something. But I'll be honest with you, in a situation like that, typically it's going to be the landowner, you gotta get in there to get the fire out. And I do know that there's places that will not allow you to come on their land and you just gotta let it burn. We have came across that in, way northwest Oklahoma, where if you cut their fence, they will sue. So, we don't go on their land, we let it burn. So in that situation, I guess the landowner, he can take action if he'd like to, but I don't, it depends on how that plays out in the county, I guess, because to be honest with you, I don't know in that situation. I mean, I know that the landowner has the right to do something about it, but I don't know how far he can get. But I know that we've cut a lot of fences and we went into a lot of places and saved a lot of land and a lot of agriculture and homes, but sometimes that's not what they.
Yeah, a lot of times them creeks need to burn though. I mean, not in here.
Well, yeah, and then that's a great red cedar eradication program.
Oh, yes,
you know, for
absolutely.
having
The less we have of those, the better. Agreed. I don't know why those were ever here, but anyway.
And the latest on red cedar eradication.
They burn hot and they burn fast, so get rid of them.
Yeah.
Just let it go, let it burn. And we have a lot of land, that in the Northwest especially, that, it's a whole lot easier to let it burn than use up resources that we don't need, because there's nothing in its way. No homes, no, farmland, no nothing, so.
Well, I do have a new constituent that has bought a fairly good-sized sawmill, and he's really looking at those red cedars, so.
Maybe he'll help you with that then.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
We're hoping. We'll see what happens.
Hopefully he'll build a lot of furniture with it when you're
There
rid
you
of
go.
it. That'd be a good thing.
Yeah. So, I guess we're just waiting for the,
Did I answer your question? I'm
Sure.
sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you want to stand in recess?
do we, yeah. Why don't we take a recess until the sheriff gets here and tell him we're in recess, if you would, on the. Back in session, Jim, we had one particular clause here in this grant that we're kind of,
That's what I sent you earlier.
yeah, have you had a chance to look at this? At this particular phrase, the worst part's on the back side. Political subdivision shall also be considered, it says shall also be considered as part of the required tasking elements under the sub-grant. In other words, any tasking which FEMA or Homeland Security wants, or any other federal agency, which is emergency management related, which requires the assistance. So they would be required to assist in any type of federal action, if you would, that has to do with any type of emergency.
So Jim, what I had pulled out there, I was one that asked to have this thing delayed till we could look, actually I could look at the contract. It's FEMA's contract with the state, with the county, right, for grant money. But that I call it the catch-22 phrase, it's in about any federal contract you see. It's the you will do all other things, right, or other duties as assigned, right?
Right.
So basically, the first part of that item B, when you start reading it, it says, any tasking that comes from, that bothers me a little bit, thinking in context of Hurricane Katrina and some other things that happened across our great nation. And I wanted you as the senior law enforcement officer and protector of citizens' rights in the county to have a look at that and kind of give us your opinion on what you think of that clause and how.
I looked at the whole thing, and I agree, shall, means you will, but as far as me and being the sheriff and stuff in the county, I'm not gonna do anything illegal, immoral, or unethical that comes to anything if someone's trying to tell me I have to do it. So that's just plain and simple. Whether it says shall or may or whatever, I'm not doing anything against anyone that's unethical, illegal, immoral, and that's just not gonna happen.
Just a quick example, like rounding up citizens and taking away their firearms.
No, we're not gonna do that. We wouldn't be involved in it.
That's all I needed to hear, Chief.
Yeah,
That's all I
yeah.
needed to hear.
In
Thank you,
this
sir.
particular instance, it just requires the assistance when it comes to trying to get resources to help manage whatever type of an emergency. And I just don't see where that would impact. So,
That,
I
I think
think
I'm pretty open-ended, and I agree. But now that I've been reassured by the sheriff, I don't have any problem with approving it.
so, do we have a motion?
I have a motion, so I so move.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I would just add, if I didn't think I couldn't have done it, I wouldn't have applied, and if there had been issues, I wouldn't have brought it to you guys. But I appreciate you approving it, and
Well, we're
see if we can't find your
here.
plow.
Chairman, these documents just require your signature as chairman.
Or
There's
like-
And they're not
flags
gonna
in
take my
each
job.
box.
All right, so we had stopped our discussion on item number 4, so Commissioner, if you would continue with your.
Yeah, I was just, again, being a little verbose about trying to bring a group of folks together to study, look at modernization, technology, that sort of stuff, and how it could help the county as a whole, as a group. And what I had in mind, what I've seen work before, is that each elected official would have a person that would be on that board, whether they want to do it themselves or send somebody in their stead. That's, up to the elected official. But to do that and go over things like, we were talking about updating our website, or talking about trying to make some of our open records requests a little more easy for the public to get to, those sorts of things. And that's kind of what I wanted to have the group to get together and talk about these things, and where it made sense to make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners to either finance and update systems and services where it made sense for the county, not necessarily just for one individual officer. So, and that's kind of my spiel, so open it up to questions again.
Regina, I seen you throw your hand.
Did you?
Yes, ma'am.
I did not throw my hand.
She didn't? I thought she was hiding it.
Yeah. I just want,
All of our stuff is on OSCN, which
Right.
everyone goes to, and all of our records are available.
Yes, ma'am. The county clerk, court clerk system, I think is a lot more advanced than some of the other networks we've got in the state right now, and I do appreciate that. I also understand that, you guys have may have a fiber pop down here that's dedicated just to the court system, and that probably can't be used, or, yeah, I understand that. So, but those are the kinds of things that, if we all kind of get together and talk about, well, here's what we have for this, and just kind of share ideas amongst the elected officials, technology ideas, and, I've seen this work here, that work there, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what I had in mind.
I actually think all 4 of us have websites out there with all of our dedicated information that each office actually works with.
I have an updated website that my IT guy takes care of. We constantly updating.
I think it's all tied to the software that each office uses.
In case you have one.
We do. It's not updated enough. We just don't have time. So Mary gets that job.
All right.
But I have a question.
Sure.
If we had a big natural disaster, a tornado, or that wiped out a big chunk of our city, and for the emergency people to get out after that and to take care of things, what is our plan? Do we all meet together somewhere as the...
You mean concerning IT?
No,
Was our plan concerning IT?
maybe
Because that's the subject we're on that.
Right. I mean, I know how mine is set up. Mine's set up underground in Edmond with a mirror of everything that we do in our office. So if we lost city streets and it's unrecognizable, you can still get the information from our office set up in Edmond. But how do I get it to you guys? I mean, or do you have a place you set up, like to get on your computers to, I don't know what.
Is this something that you would know about there, David?
Well,
or-
as far as you guys with your computers and stuff, I don't know that. But I can tell you, we've got I'll have to pull it, a courthouse disaster plan if something major happened. And our first location to go to, if we lose the courthouse, is the fairgrounds. And our backup location after that, if we can't go to the fairgrounds, is the community center in Crescent.
So
It's
what-
gonna take some time to get things set up. I know, like, at the fairgrounds, there's not internet at the building, so it would take Cox a little bit of time to get internet ran to that building. They would more than happy run it now and charge us, I can't remember what it was, a lot of money to have it there today, but we have to pay for that, and it wasn't feasible to at the
Whereas
time.
if we did have a disaster, then that money would be reimbursable through.
If it was a big one,
FEMA.
more than likely, but we can't spend money without knowing for sure. Just because you have a disaster, you don't want to go
Right.
crazy thinking, well,
Right.
FEMA's going to reimburse this.
It
We
would
still
be
have
great to have
consider-
that redundancy, but
Yeah,
are
We do
we?
have the availability to get cows out here.
yeah.
The reason I asked is
I
because of
think
the
what-
tornadoes in Moore and Norman. There were visual things wiped out. They didn't know where people's homes were and
Sure.
how to find them and everything.
Absolutely.
And I know that we're capable of getting that right to you. I just don't know how to get it to you. Where?
I think what Tisha was describing is what in the IT world we call disaster recovery, right? So emergency management, disaster recovery in the IT side. So they've been doing a very good job, from my understanding, of doing off-site backups and storing images of all of the documents that they need to do their job, right, and to present to the people. So in that idea, it does pertain to this technology council that I'm talking about. So disaster recovery, one of the areas that hardly ever gets tested is the actual recovery piece of that. And that's, you take backup tapes off of your systems and you give them to a company like Iron Mountain to go store them in a secure vault someplace, right? Well, those tapes are really good up until the point where you need to restore your systems from backup. No one hardly ever does that test, does a full restore from backup to see if your systems will come back up. Not only your systems, but your records, right? That's the important thing, and that's why we need a disaster recovery plan. And there's a requirement for a county-wide DR plan for that. And I think that's one of the issues that we could look at in our technology group. But
I back up off-site
Yes,
every
ma'am.
night.
Mine
and
backs up
Ian.
every night,
Every night.
on-site and off-site.
Mine too, both.
okay, so imagine the big white building across the street goes away and all the principals are gone too. Now we got to reconstitute the government here. Well, how do we do that? So
I have
if-
two laptops at home with air cards that would put me right back into
and
my
you as the
system.
principal are gone, you're not here anymore.
My
So,
second in command.
so yeah, right. So my thoughts are, if we have those, and that's great that you've already got a process done for that. That's good. But as a county, if we don't have that all together, right, and look at it as a county-wide operation, and how do we bring everybody back together and bring everything back up, then as a county disaster recovery plan, I'm not sure we've got one of those. We may have a few of our county officers that are better than others at it right now. And I kind of think that's where we're at. Not to throw rocks or anything, but I mean, even Mike's
Basically redundant.
improvement.
How redundant are we?
So what-
How
It's an inspector, it's a statutory requirement as well to have that.
Well, the auditor that audited my office kept hounding me, how do you get that out to them? You know, and I told her what we have, and I really don't know the county's plan. And then I heard that we were all to meet at the fairgrounds. But then what? Do you have the computers there? I mean, I don't know how long it takes, or anything about it. I just want to do my
And
part.
that has to do with the whole plan, right? So you've got hardware to restore, you've got software, you've got applications to restore, you've got software, data to restore after that. There's a sequence to do that. In data center operations, there's a whole sequence of events to restore.
So this committee would be looking at how do we get the funding for
Well, funding.
being
would be-
able to set up a off-site
Yes, it would.
courthouse.
Not only the funding, but, from start to finish, this is how we see this happening if we have to reconstitute the government.
Correct.
Right. From a technology standpoint, yes, ma'am.
I will say, the auditors had several years ago put out a sample disaster recovery that each officer was to use. The instructions were that it was to be on-site, off-site, with other employees, and contained in, if you follow what they laid out, were things like, what's the contact information for your computer systems? Where would you go to get this? All your phone numbers, all of that for each office, and it was to be left in various places. So part of the answer, Tish, is I think each of us, in the event that would happen, or our seconds, if we went down with the ship, has that information to start hitting the phone. And I mean, I'm on the phone to CalPro, I need a server, I need 10 computers, now. Now, I will say I'm fortunate with CalPro, with the offsite, that they actually monitor through the day during bad weather. And I learned this 2 years ago when we had tornadoes bearing down on us, that they had jumped on and started a midday offsite backup because we were under a tornado warning. So I thought that was absolutely phenomenal of them to have that foresight on our behalf. And it might be something each of you want to ask your,
My IT guy goes in and backs up like 4 times a day.
and that kind of thing. But
And
that
I-
kind
and I
of,
do it at something.
who's gonna get, what's gonna get, is supposed to be spelled out in the packet that.
But like, I would assume him would need maps from us, and so he calls me, or how does that work?
But just like in emergency management, right? Yeah, I mean, you're very familiar with the concept of a tabletop exercise,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, so we do the same thing in IT to go through a tabletop exercise. Okay, here's the scenario that we're gonna deal with today. Tornado come through, pushed out this part's gone, the sheriff has contained the site, so you get the concept, you get a concept of the operation, and then you go through the exercise, how do we respond? Okay, those things that we've talked about here, like, okay, CalPro says that they will be able to do this. Well, this has happened in 4 other counties, and so there's a shortage of systems. Do we have contracts in place or pre-negotiated contracts where we know we can go out and get this hardware in a timely manner? Those are the sorts of things that you do in a tabletop exercise to see where your holes are at before you have to really start catching water in yourself. You know what I mean?
Well, we currently, David, we have the Logan County Emergency Planning Committee. Would this be something that would fall under their purview, or is it something that really needs to be through the county?
I think this would be more of a county thing. I don't think the LAPC would really fall into this.
And then if we're really doing something like this, maybe, what does Guthrie have like this? Do you have any idea?
I want to
Or
say they're
any other
using the
small
city of
towns.
Edmond does their IT, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But I don't know.
I can say that as being the office that took that disaster of a fire in the middle of the night in 1998, and that was before we had near the computer and the IT and the things that we have now. I can tell you that that fire hit at 10:30 at night on a Friday. The office was down Monday partially. By Tuesday morning, we were recording documents.
Chairman, I'd volunteer one other piece of information. I think what I'm seeing in audit reports coming out from the state auditor and inspector, they are also beginning to look at the IT disaster recovery for counties, not just individual offices, but a county-wide plan. That's starting to make more and more audits as a negative finding that has to be created. So that's the other reason that I thought it might be a good idea if we could get out in front of it and show them that we're actually trying to do something proactive in that regard.
I guess I'm kind of curious, and it's just curiosity on this committee and this modernization and things. Are you really looking at trying to get into how our individual systems and that for the work that we do? I guess I'm not understanding that.
No, not really.
Okay.
Not really. I think though that once 2 or 3 officials might understand that they're doing things the same way, and there's some synergies there, that those sorts of things happen naturally in those kind of committees and organizations. But no, I don't see the Board of Commissioners directing any elected official to do anything specifically in their office. That would be a little bit of an overreach in my mind.
Just curious.
So on the committee, so you're thinking have our employees come instead of the county officer? I mean,
It's up to the county. It'd be up to the county officers. Right?
I just thought maybe we ought to have a county officers meeting every other month or something and discuss this very
Right,
thing.
I don't see why have to have a committee. Why wouldn't it just be officers meeting?
And you got some ideas on a webpage too?
Yeah, sure do. I mean, we talked about the website earlier, and be happy to put that presentation back together for the officers again. I agree. I think probably, and I don't like to have meetings just to have meetings, but I think, if the county officers are a group, we could get together at least once a month and talk to each other. I think it would be a lot. I think these things would come together a little more. So,
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's a great exchange of information. We get a better understanding of
I
how
mean,
it
I'm not for
works.
creating another committee, just to have another committee, right? I mean, the whole goal of this is to help make the county a little more IT friendly and produce open records and documents to the people.
Just out of curiosity, do we have a T1? We don't have a T1 coming anywhere.
T1s are old, that's an old technology.
Or whatever kind of high speed.
You either have DSL or
DSL
cable or something
really
like
the
that.
way to go.
I think all of us, I think, are on cable.
Yeah, and that's DSL.
T1 is the old telecommunications
Right.
designation for a 1.44 megabyte line. And that's, I think there's 23 T1s and a DS3. And they quit using DS3s and T1s for internet a few years ago, once they started using fiber optics cable quite a bit. So now it's mostly fiber.
I just say if we do have some high volume, I know they do still use T1s for high volume. So that was just a.
I think
Just
every
real
one of our
quick.
offices are on cable. I think the difference is just where we've chosen to, what level of in and out.
So,
that we each
Ted,
have.
is there something that we could put on our webpage that would help your office, or, I mean, what kind of ideas do we need to have a webpage?
So my thoughts are, the county website, it has a listing right now of all the county officers. Some of those links go to, like, the treasurer's page, and some of the links goes to the county clerk's page, their own, and the one that goes to the county clerks is the one set up by, I think, Kelpro, right? So that's the Kelpro page, right? But what I see, a small change, and I'm going to pick on the clerk for just a second. Instead of it going directly to the Kelpro page, it would go to the county clerk's page like it used to, and then there would be a link for that on her page and on the clerk's page. But the clerk's page would show who the clerk is, who works there, all of the stuff that's, I mean, all of the information for the county clerk, which is not available on the CalPro page, right? So it would be all the things that you'd want to, you see what I'm getting? Those are the kind of ideas that I have for the county page, and it makes it a little bit more, not compressed, that's not what I'm looking for, but the information's all in one spot
Organized.
for everybody, for the citizens. They go to one spot, and if they want to go to the county treasurer, find out how to pay, whatever, you know, that's already set up pretty well. They go to the treasurer's link, goes to your page. You guys do a pretty good job on that. How to get information, how to request records, those sorts of things, I think we can do a little better job on. But those are all just
Because
little.
there's links on my page for all that.
Right, but I'm talking about.
Mortgage tax, there's
Yes, ma'am.
tabs for, you know.
Right. And it's not a problem once a citizen gets to your website and they know that the county treasurer is the one I need to ask about this. But when they don't know that the county treasurer is the one, or even better, how many times do people get confused on whether it's the court clerk or the county clerk that I need to talk about?
We can't count the number of
That never
phone
happens,
calls.
right? But those are the kind of things I
Are there of?
think, you know, with a little information on the splash page or the landing page for the county, we can help direct the citizens where they need to go a little better, and that's kind of what I was looking at.
Do you think a little splash page for each individual office?
Yes.
I
Yes.
know our office gets a lot of questions that they don't understand. We can probably do better on ours.
But doing this as a group of officers or as a committee, like I said, I'm not held up on having a committee, as long as, you know, we just get together and talk about how to make things better. And
I think the
put
idea
those
of the
things on the
committee was
agenda.
to allow an employee rather than an officer if they chose. Is that kind of where that?
Well, the committee would be something that would be done offsite, and it's not necessarily, that committee wouldn't necessarily have to hold open meetings, if you will. They could just have little committee meetings and talk
Well,
about
then it wouldn't
things.
be a committee. Not as
long as-
formed on this.
Yeah,
it
as long
wouldn't
as
be a
they're- as
committee,
long as-
Because any committees that the county forms has to come under the open meeting.
As long as
So-
they're not doing county business, right? If they're making recommendations to a board that makes decisions, then the way I understand it, it's not necessarily under the open meeting. I don't care whether or not it's under the Open Meeting Act or not. That's not my point. My point is that, yes, if to have a committee meeting, you empower people that work with us to be a part of those committees, and we get more ideas. I guess my point there is, there's not one of us that's as smart as all of us put together, so you never know where your great idea is going to come from. It may be your newest employee. Normally, that's where they come from, to be honest with you.
Well, I think any committee that would come together and formulate a recommendation that would be considered by the officers of the county would come under the Open Meeting Act. I could be incorrect on that, but I'm pretty certain that's true.
Well, I guess the officers really picked it, I mean, I guess ultimately if the commissioners want to form a committee, that's their decision as the board to do that. But I think what the point of this was to kind of get the input of how the officers wanted to handle it.
It was.
So, I mean,
And I'm kind of thinking a get-together every month or two would be in order for being able to handle that and see what kind of progress we've made on our IPs.
I have another question.
Sure.
How is everybody's backed up? Is yours backed up to the cloud, or is it backed up where it's not in the cloud? Do you know? Because mine's not in the cloud.
mine's,
'Cause I don't believe in
it goes
that.
straight into Kelpro's
Mine goes straight to
servers, and then I do on-site. So I have an on-site and an off-site every day.
That's good.
KelPro backs all my stuff up, which Troy does.
Same for me. We're all backed up on KilPro. So,
But I don't know if it's in a cloud or.
Mine's not in a
or
cloud.
what, but
And like my IT guy works closely with KelPro. In fact, if my IT guy croaked over, KelPro would take over.
I'm not much of an IT guy. I know that surprised you.
I don't think there's anything wrong with, and actually, these two commissioners can verify that I've, on many occasions, mentioned to them that we needed to revamp the county website.
So what do we wanna do on this, y'all?
Input.
I vote that the officers just get together once a month. That's my vote.
I have no problem with that. If we do it all as officers, it has to be called special meetings for the BoCC.
You said call for action, so.
Well, I don't have I mean, I just seen the officers do it, but, I mean, every once in a while I might have to send the first deputy or something if I can't make it.
Yeah, because I may have to too, send mine. Time-wise is hard, but
And Marvin's probably right, if we all just keep meeting and beat the same dog every time, you probably ain't gonna go very far. It might hurt, wouldn't hurt to bring in someone new.
So would we want to go ahead and set up our next meeting, or is that an action item? That's not an action item.
How often would y'all like to
Can we
meet?
plan around it, or maybe we ought to just interact and see when our next meeting would be?
It's based on what we have going on.
Fridays are your best day, aren't they? No?
Oh, yes, for felony and civil and
Oh, okay.
Rivo and.
It's,
How often would you like to meet?
This type of committee, probably about every 6 weeks, something like that. About every 6 weeks. So,
I was saying 8, I was thinking 8.
Yeah.
Jim, you got an IT guy, huh?
I do. You know, our stuff is backed up to offsite and our Otis is backed up, our Otis is backed up offsite, everything else is Kelpro.
so what would work, would it work better to
Be
meet
good for them
earlier,
to come
like
to
at
one of
8
these
o'clock,
and hear some
than
of
the
his
9
ideas.
for everybody?
I can do that.
8 o'clock, better?
Mondays and Fridays are not good for me. Mondays I have staff meetings, and Fridays I have other things, but usually citizens come in. In fact, I got a 10 o'clock meeting with citizens this morning, but any other time.
Thursdays are normally pretty slow for me so far, but I'll need that.
Even Friday, I'll make arrangements. Every Monday I have a staff meeting, it goes to 9:15.
So we ballpark at 6 weeks at 8 o'clock in the morning.
I like Thursdays better than Tuesdays, but I'm good
Because
with
we don't
Fridays.
have, because the BoCC meetings float through the day of the week too.
Absolutely.
So, we kind of have to just, we'll hit 6 weeks at 8 o'clock in the morning on where it might be a day or two.
Sure, sure. Give or take. Sound good?
So,
So any recommendations today?
I think you,
What?
Marvin, had you not been researching the open range at the state level?
yes, I've been doing a lot of research on what the state does. As a matter of fact, I've been asked and I've accepted to sit on the state IT modernization committee for counties, for county governments, and working with the folks at what used to be the Office of State Finance. I know they don't call them that anymore, but when I was in state government before, that's what we called them. But
What is it now? Everything falls under OMES?
yeah, OMS, yeah, that's it. But yeah, I am on that committee and working with them on that. The state website, or the websites that are furnished by them, it's called the CMS Customer Resource Management System. It's pretty good. It's what Wagner uses. They are changing that. I'm not sure it would be something we'd want to jump into as a county right now. These are all things we would discuss.
See, I
in the
personally
meeting,
would
but-
think, my own personal opinion, I would rather the county have the county.
Yeah.
To mix with the state, I'm not that in favor of.
Well, nobody
I like
is.
separation of government.
Nobody is. And this,
The government don't.
if I could help maybe put everybody at ease there just a little bit, this committee that I'm on, the State Modernization Committee, isn't one that's directing any kinds of actions at all. And that's a fear that a lot of folks have, and I've seen for years and years and years, right? Anytime somebody puts a Technology and Modernization Committee together, the first fear is, oh, they're gonna tell us what we have to do. Well, no, that's not the intent at all. And what they're trying to do is to put systems and make things available to counties that they normally wouldn't see and normally wouldn't have. The email systems that are coming online, those are things, if you go back to the Open Records Act, right, terms defined, right? Go and read what a record actually is. It'll scare you to death. How many people in here are breaking the law, right? Raise your hands. Nobody wants to do that, right? So those are the kind of things in the technology and modernization, we can say, well, maybe we're not quite following everything that needs to be done the way it's spelled out here, but we want to do that, we want to make it right. That's one of the things on the Technology and Modernization Committee, that we can't go in, you can't go into a county and say, you guys are doing things illegal. Because that's a really great way for them to say, we don't want you in our county anymore. Right. What we want to do though, we don't want, as a county, we don't want to say we're not doing things right. What we want to do is be able to look at what the requirements are and hit those straightforward. And I think the IT overview and oversight coming from the state, from inspections, from outside agencies that we're going to see is going to increase. It's not going to decrease. It's going to, as technology is used more and more by people, everybody's got one of these little smartphones or little iPods, Apples, and that's the way they want to access their information now. So and I think that we need to get in that.
I think we're still, I got a law passed that I can email the tax statements to the taxpayers, and not get a paper statement.
Right.
And so we implemented that, and then the online tax payments.
That's actually super.
So
that saves a lot of
we're already
things.
kind of,
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
Um,
you can pay online. Gosh, a
God, I
couple
wish
bucks,
I'd known
but
that.
still.
I wouldn't have had to send somebody across the street.
It's on my website.
I don't read it. I need
On my
to.
tax statement, it says pay online.
Well, maybe that's where some of our officers ought to visit our other officers'
Yeah,
websites
I'm
and
gonna
get
have
familiar
to.
with them.
Probably another reason we all need to get together more often.
One of the issues I have is the autonomy of local government. We have an issue now, I think, with the federals, with the state autonomy, if you would. And there are 3 tiers of government that, honestly, I think should continue to be separated. But of course, the small local governments have been quite impacted by a lot of the state laws. So when you get this IT modernization committee that's up and going, apparently, it will be making recommendations possibly to the legislature, which could then throw edicts down to the local government, telling them how they're, by golly, going to run their government, which there is now. I agree with that, and it does need some hyperparameters and such. But we've been made to kind of look like evil people down here, and we're part of the community. We're beholden to our local citizens for what we do, and if we don't, we're held accountable right there in the community. And unlike some of our legislators, so it just worries me, this committee that you're on. But we'll see what all transpires from it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it.
That committee doesn't make any recommendations to the legislature at all.
Just makes resources available.
It's a OMS committee that is there to study how information technology can best be utilized at the county level. And they're bringing people in from the county clerks. There's a couple of, there's one other commissioner on there that I know of, Ray Vaughn, I believe is on there.
Okay.
The court clerk from, there's a court clerk from Oklahoma City, the county clerk from Oklahoma City. There's a few other court and county clerks on there as well. But those,
So
mostly.
it's pretty well represented by local government.
It is, but it is a little, they do have quite a few state people, OMS, on there. It's about half and half county and half OMS folks.
I think the biggest problem we run into when we're trying to talk about county stuff is, number one, there seems to be 77 ways to get to the same end result.
True.
And we are so diverse. I mean, we still have county clerks in this state that are not computerized at all. Everything they're doing is still by hand.
Sure.
And then you have Tulsa County and Oklahoma County that might as well be their own states, because they're so different from the rest of us, that you can't compare what we do to them too. So there's such disparity in where we all are in the process that it makes it tough to put stuff out there that balances to everyone in the positions that they're in.
Absolutely.
Even,
Our
I think there's
technology.
actually 231 ways to do things.
So Marvin, what kind of stuff do you think like you would put on this webpage?
Well, so the sunshine review part of open government, right, goes through and rates websites, and we talked about that. And that's one of the presentations I could put back together again and bring to the board and to the folks. But basically, that presentation I gave about the website that talked about the different areas of concern and the different things that needed to be listed, that's what, I mean, honestly, no hidden agenda, that's what I think we need to look at in improving on our
But what
website.
kind of information? I mean, like, today we're doing this, I mean, are you gonna break it down to a daily schedule?
No. I could, like I said, I didn't come prepared to do that today, but, I can send that information out to the county officers again if you want to do that.
I would
I
like
appreciate it.
that.
I have a meeting with a citizen
Thanks.
at 10 o'clock and I have to go.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Sheriff.
And I think we pretty well beat the horse, haven't we?
Did you have a question, Trish?
I was just gonna ask him to send that to me.
Yeah, will do.
Okay.
I was just
But
trying to
that's-
figure out what kind of information I need to get and, you know.
No, as
see
far
what we
as, and see, those are, again, those are things that we would get together and talk about. Is this really what we want to do? And then everybody goes, oh, yeah, I think it's a good idea. Or no, I don't think it's a good idea, we need to do it this way. That's the kind of input, iterative input that I was looking for from the group, or from a committee. If, it doesn't matter.
No more discussion. Moving on to item 5, discussion, comments, announcements by any county officer pertaining to their office or county business. I believe we have any additions to what we've already said? Not hearing any. We go to number 7, comments, announcements, questions by the Board of County Commissioners.
I got a question. What are we gonna do on item 4?
Item 4,
This was a discussion.
it was a discussion, there's no action.
Okay,
I figured we were gonna meet at least every 6 weeks.
that's kind
That's
of
what
what
I got out of it.
That's
too, but
what.
that is an action though, right, in itself? I'm not trying to split hairs here, I just wanna make sure that this doesn't get dropped, right?
I don't
As a-
think it'll
As a
be-
no action, again.
It wasn't worded for a formal action to be taken. It was, and I was told to put it on as a discussion item. I think we've all just kind of communally agreed to say we're gonna meet every 6 weeks at 8 o'clock in the morning. And that would be a called special
Right.
meeting.
So I guess it all depends on verbiage, and again, I'm not trying to split hairs here, but it says pertain to the creation of, right? So that in itself is an implied action. Not really implied, that's an action. So, yes, no, I don't have a problem, yes, no on that. If we don't need to create a special one, that's fine. If the decision is we want to get together as county officers and go over this, I guess I'm looking for something other than us just getting together and
Well,
talking
this
about
was
this
us to
today.
get together to decide whether we wanted to create such a committee, and I think our discussion was that,
Okay.
yeah, I don't think so. But we would like to, in lieu of that, have all the elected officers come together a little more frequently, which is something that,
I think what Commissioner Goodman is wanting is more to how we're gonna leave here and it's going to be recorded as to what we decided to do on this item.
What's next?
It's not really a no action, it wasn't scheduled to be action anyway. I can make notes that the officers discussed and agreed to hold officers' meetings every 6 weeks for the purpose of discussing the county technology and modernization.
I'm good with that,
Does that
if that's all right.
kind of,
Yeah,
am I
yeah,
in that?
absolutely, yeah, yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Okay.
but that wouldn't be an action item.
It wasn't an action for the board to vote on. It was no worded as such.
It was a table.
I think he was wanting to make sure that it didn't just go down as a no action.
Gotcha.
So, I got that.
Good,
Thank you.
you bet. I think we need to skip down to number 8. What do you think?
Was Randy Simmons allowed to be heard?
Anybody? I think we,
I make a motion to adjourn.
second.
Second?
All right.
Aye.